Hi, this is David Hicks. Welcome to part 3 of Getting to Know Jesus. Now, if you look at my board here, it has nothing to do, or at least you won't see the name Jesus anywhere. That's because we're going to talk about things that happened before Jesus came. In part 1, we talked about how Jesus was there with God in the beginning. They had a relationship of equality, and yet Jesus gave that up forever, that relationship of equality, to become God's servant to help save us. In part 2, we looked at how in Isaiah prophesies about the kind of life that Jesus would live. And that language is full of the language of suffering. And it amazes me, and I hope it amazes you, or at least touches your heart, that okay, God is going to send Jesus to live on this earth, and they choose together a hard life for Jesus. They don't choose a life of luxury and a life of ease, but Jesus lived a hard life to help save us. Now, before Jesus came, before he was born of the Virgin Mary, what happened on the earth? That's what we're going to start talking about. This is going to be a 2-part segment. Hopefully we'll get through this part now, and then I'll continue it in the next video. We'll just go to about, I want to keep this video at about 15 minutes long, and so I'll stop just whenever we get about to that point. All right, so it started with Adam and Eve, the first man and woman. God made Adam and Eve in his own image, in his own likeness, meaning God made mankind to be like him. We were made in his image because God wanted us to learn to be like him, meaning he wanted us to learn to love what he loves, value what he values, choose the things that he has chosen. What are those things? Love, faith, kindness, goodness, patience, perseverance, mercy, compassion, forgiveness, grace. Any and every good thing that you can name, morally good, those are the things that God wanted for mankind. He wanted us to be a people of trust, a people of faith, not just trusting and being able to put our faith in one another, but especially putting our trust in him, trusting his word and believing and following and obeying the things that he tells us. So God created Adam and Eve. When they were 1 day old, they were married. Very interesting. They had adult bodies. They were old enough to be in a marital relationship in that sense, but yet they were still 1 day old. There's another amazing thing about this. They were different in that they had a childlike innocence to them. Adam and Eve were adults, they were married, but they didn't understand the concept of good and evil. And so with that childlike innocence, they weren't thinking in terms of stealing or murdering or lying or manipulating or they didn't have that battle going on within them of, hey, you need to do what's right. No, you need to do what's wrong. They were innocent. The problem was they ended up disobeying God. God had given them an opportunity to choose whether they would follow him and trust him or whether they would disobey. You see, where Adam and Eve lived in the Garden of Eden, there were 2 special trees. One was the tree of life. There were all sorts of fruit trees in the garden, but there were 2 special ones. One was the tree of life. You ate the fruit from that tree, it would help you live forever on this earth. It was the fountain of youth in fruit form, shall we say. The other tree was the tree that gives knowledge about good and evil. And it did exactly what it sounded like. It would take away your innocence and help you understand the concepts of good and evil. So Adam and Eve ended up disobeying God. They were banished from the tree of life. They had to start working. Adam had to start working very hard for his food. And the most important thing was when they ate from that fruit and they were banished from the garden, the process of physical death began. Adam and Eve had sons and daughters. Two of the sons that we know about are Cain and Abel. Now, the reason I have a line crossed through Abel was because, in all honesty, I did this video before and I forgot to push the play button or the record button. So I went like through 15 minutes and then I got to the end and I'm like, I just didn't record this. So that's the real reason there's a line through it. But let's pretend that I planned this. The reason there's a line through Abel's name is because Cain got jealous of Abel. He killed Abel. And in his place, Eve had a son named Seth. Now the interesting thing here is, well, there's a couple of interesting things. One is there's darkness. Some of the hardest darkness comes from our own family members, and it goes all the way back to the beginning. And if you are a victim of that darkness from your own family members, God understands this. Jesus understands this. And they can help you deal with it. They've been dealing with it since the very first family. But another interesting thing through here is that many years later, it was through Seth that Noah was born. In Noah's day, mankind was getting more and more corrupt. As they populated the earth, they became more corrupt, more violent, more evil. God saw that the thoughts and intentions of mankind were only evil all the time. It was the exact opposite of everything that God wanted them to be. God created us to embrace love and embrace goodness. And yet mankind was embracing evil, violence, corruption. God's dream, if you will, was now a nightmare. And so God basically decided to start all over, with the exception of one man, and that was Noah. One man and his family. God saved Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives because Noah was still a righteous man. And so God told Noah, mankind is totally corrupt. I am going to destroy the earth with a flood. You are to build an ark. You, your wife, your 3 sons, their 3 wives will enter the ark. And along with it, 2 of every kind of animal, meaning the land animals, the land creatures, the birds, etc., would be on the ark. Now there are a few exceptions to where sometimes there were more than just 2. But let's keep it simple for now. And so God, once the ark was built, God flooded the earth. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And water wasn't just raining down upon the earth, it was coming up from underneath the earth. The fountains of the deep broke forth. And so water was coming from all directions. And the entire earth was flooded. But God saved Noah and his family and the animals that were on the ark because Noah trusted God. Many years later, after Noah, was the tower. We read about the Tower of Babel. Now, mankind had been told, God had told both Adam and Eve, Noah and his family, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. Well, at this time period, mankind was still speaking the same language. It had probably evolved some from when Adam and Eve were first created, but it was still, everybody was speaking the same language. And they said, hey, let's not spread out over all the earth. Let's just live here. And let's build a skyscraper, a tower that would reach to the sky. They reached to the heavens. And so God came and he looked at this tower they were building. He looked at what they were doing, and he said, if they've chosen to do this, now anything that they decide to do will not be withheld from them. They're going to be able to do anything that they put their minds to. And the implication being, well, that's not really going to be a good thing. And so God confused their languages, made some people speak this language, some people speak that language, all throughout the mankind. And so they couldn't work together anymore. They couldn't all stay in one place anymore because they couldn't communicate well enough to survive. And so what would have happened is you would finally find people in the crowd that were speaking the same language you were speaking, and you would go somewhere and settle down together and build your own society. And so that way, by God confusing the languages, mankind spread over all the earth like he had wanted them to do in the first place. And that tower became known as the Tower of Babel, because there God confused the languages of the people. The next major move we see God making was with a guy named Abram and his wife Sarai, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Sarai. Odds are I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Later, God changed his name to Abraham and his wife's name to Sarah. God blessed Abram because of his great faith. And he gave 3 promises to Abram, 3 very important promises. One was that through his seed, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Meaning through one of his descendants, every nation in the world would be blessed. Now, how could that be possible? Because that descendant was Jesus. Jesus was born of Mary. His stepdad, his adopted dad, however you want to look at him, was Joseph. Both of them were descendants of Abraham and Sarah. Now, this little side bar we have going here happened because Abraham and Sarah had no children. And the other 2 parts of the promises involved their descendants. The other 2 parts were that God would give Canaan to Abraham's descendants as a possession, as an inheritance, Canaan being the land comprising the eastern border of the Mediterranean Sea. That's the simplest, easiest way to describe it. Jerusalem's over there, the Jordan River, the Dead Sea. But Abraham's descendants would inherit that land. And back in those days, that land was described as a land flowing with milk and honey, meaning it was just an awesome land in which to live. And that Abraham's descendants would be as many as the stars in heaven and the sand on the seashore. Meaning he was going to have so many descendants you couldn't count them. But they were old. Sarah was past childbearing age, and they had no children. But yet Abraham believed God, and God credited that to Abraham as righteousness. This sidebar happened because during that time that they were waiting for their child to be born, they kind of gave up. And Sarah came to Abraham and she said, look, here's my maidservant Hagar. Have a child through her. And he will, she was going to basically be a surrogate mother. And that Ishmael would kind of, sort of, be considered Sarah's son. And so Abraham said, okay. And so he married Hagar, had a son named Ishmael. But Ishmael was not the one to whom God continued his promises. We'll see how that was made to Isaac in our next video. Thank you for listening.